earlier on you were saying about the kind of time that you spend in Poland. Um, can we just talk a little bit about that and
Yeah.
you know, help people understand a bit more how that connection came about and what that all kind of looks like?
Okay, then. I'll try and give you a bit of a timeline.
Okay.
This one. Um, so I moved to London in 2004, which
Hmm.
was the year when the Polish invasion happened. Um,
Right. Okay.
so I joined the EU in 2004.
Okay.
And so I lived in this shared house, and I had this landlord called Mike Nichols, who was an ex music journalist, and he kind of took me under his wing a little bit. Um, and I moved into this house, and it was actually, I spent a few days at another one of his properties, and it was really quite horrible and miserable, and I wanted to go back. And he he kind of we met up in this pub. He's
Hmm.
from Manchester, and I'm
Hmm.
a fellow Northerner,
Yeah.
And he sort of did that thing where when someone looks at you and doesn't say anything, and he said, "I said I don't like it here. I don't like it in London. I'm like scared."
Hmm. Hmm.
And he sort of just looked at me and he didn't say anything. And he sort of said, like, I can't remember exactly, but it was like, you've got to make this work, you know. And he didn't really say too much, and he just sort of looked at me, and it was like a look of you're not going anywhere, you know. So he said, I've got another property in a place called Walthamstow Village, which is it's now like a really sought after area. Uh,
Okay.
so I moved into this Victorian house there, and I had a little box room,
Hmm.
and I paid peanuts, no bills or anything. I mean, it really was peanuts, and I was living in this really nice part of London. And so anyway, then after I think yeah maybe 6 months into the year, all of these Polish people turned up in the house. Um, and I don't suppose I'd met any Polish people until then. Um, and I guess apart from a few kind of teething problems, I got on quite well with them, and I found them to be very kind of similar to British people, but because I lived with there was some British people in the house. It was uh, it was a bit kind of rough. It was a bit like the young ones. Like there was a bin man. We lived with this bin man. You're not allowed to say bin man now, are you? Rubbish disposal person, and he was a biker, and he used to like sleep with his bits of his motorbike in the room and all this kind of stuff. Really
Okay.
crazy. Like it really was like the young ones. And so then there was these two Polish girls, and then some more people came. One of them actually became my yoga teacher after. There's another story. Um, so um, so that was my first taste, and so after a couple of years, I moved out of that house, and I've met more Polish people, um, and I decided to go to Poland. So this was 2007 now, and I had a little tour of Poland booked. I just went on my own, and I ended up with horrific food poisoning
God.
from drinking tap water. So I
Okay.
did one gig, ended up doing one gig in a place called Poznan, um, which is in the west. It used to be part of Germany. Um, so if you go from Berlin, So I did my one gig there in this tiny little strange place called Cafe Mienska. I think a meat market it translates as it must have been an old meat market or something. And it was this really weird club, and there was people like saw some real poverty there. There was people like selling cassette tapes, which were really out of date then. They're retro now.
Hmm.
And I just had these kind of snapshot images in my mind, and I there's so many stories within stories. I was scared of flying at the time. I hadn't flown for years since I took a little jet plane to the Isle of Man, and it was a really horrible flight. I was like, oh, I'm not getting in a plane again. Oh, sorry, that happened later. My timeline's all over the place. I didn't fly. Didn't that was 2008. Sorry. Was scared of flying anyway, so I took the train, and on the way I went through Paris, and I met this actress called Sarah Pratt, an American actress who'd moved to Paris, and she's reasonably famous. She'd been in a few, been in Sex and the City and stuff like this, and so I ended up just friends, and she kind of waved me off when I went to Poland on the night train and stuff, and that was part of the journey anyway. And it's all given me a taste of this travel thing and how you could meet these people on the way and all this stuff. So when I was in Poland, am I okay to just witter up here?
Yeah.
So because it's all coming back now, and I'd arranged to meet a couple of English people. So I'd done this through MySpace at the time.
Yeah.
So I had a few gigs, like a mini tour. I was going to go around Poland, and I'd already set up a couple of meetings with people who I'd met online and people who I knew from London, Polish people I knew, because I did film extras as another thing, and I knew this. I'd done this big long film extra for about I think it was like 6 weeks solid, with like 4 days off. It was really intense. I had to be up at like 3:30 every morning at Pinewood Studios on the train. And anyway, so I met her while I was out there and all this other stuff. So I've lost where I am now. So anyway, another name drop here. There's a band called Marillion.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan.
Scottish band, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, they had a singer called Fish, and for some reason, certain bands are popular in Poland, whereas other ones aren't. And it's all to do with during communism, people used to copy tapes, copies of copies of copies,
okay.
And they would get past the Iron Curtain, and you would end up with like they'd be obsessed with one band, and then they wouldn't know anything about a really famous band that you'd expect them to know about, So anyway, Marillion was one of those bands. So I met this fella in Krakow. I'd arranged it before. He was called Stuart McLean, and he had sung in Marillion for about 3 weeks and replaced Fish.
Wow.
And so I arranged to meet him at this cafe, and he took ages to come. And I was like, German sense of time, like he's 1.5 minutes late, and then it kind of turned into like 45 minutes or whatever. And he walked in, and I felt so bad because he had one leg. And he'd hobbled all the way across Krakow to come and meet me, and I thought, oh God, yeah, I was like cursing him, So anyway, I ended up with the food poisoning in Krakow. So that was the Polish connection. Then I went back, and I played in a couple of bands with Polish people in London. A girl called it's always women, isn't it? Have you noticed? Girl called Milena, who now runs a clothes shop in London, in Stoke Newington off Newington Green.
Nice.
And I worked there for a little bit when she opened it, and I helped her out for a week or two. And I was, so I met Milena through another friend. She turned out to be a drummer, and so we can't remember exactly how things happened, but we ended up getting together, and we recorded a couple of tracks, and we even played together at the Bull and Gate, which is now gone, in Kentish Town. And we had this song called Black River, and she'd played in another band in Poland who had sort of they had a rehearsal room, and they'd made a video, and they were sort of going places and split up before she moved to London. But it's strange because they actually became a band which got quite popular in Poland called Black River. So it was very strange this happened at the same time of us having this song called Black River. And another name drop is Malcolm Joseph, who he played bass on that track. He was in Massive Attack, and he produced 3 tracks for me when I was in London, and we did all this under my name. It was a band, but it was just called Sam Jones, and various different people playing at that time, and we were like a 2-piece band. And when we played at the Bull and Gate, just to bring the Poland thing back in, as I sort of got an old drummer back from Oxford who I'd played with years ago. He did this gig with me, and we had a Polish bass player. Okay. So it's this thing with Polish musicians. So this is like 2008 sort of time. So what happens next with Poland is I basically continue to live in London, and I do a couple of European tours. This is years later. And so I do one in 2016. So I hadn't been to Poland for 9 years. And I was busking in Brussels. I used to hold a busking license on the Grand Place for a couple of years.
Oh, wow.
So I used to escape London by getting the Eurostar to Belgium. There's a whole nother story there. God, you'd need about 5 hours on here for me to make sense of all this stuff.
We'll come back to that then.
Yeah. So I'm in Brussels, and I'm busking, and I'm on someone else's patch. And this another Polish girl, strangely enough, she came up to me, and she sort of said, how long are you going to be? Because that's my patch, kind of thing. And I used to just pitch up anywhere, really. I used to sort of annoy the police, which is really great to annoy the Belgian police, because they're real idiots over there. Anyway, and so I got talking to her, and she said she was Polish, which is a bit unusual to find someone from Poland at that time in Belgium. And she said she was from this place called Torun. So we kept in contact, and I thought, oh, Torun, interesting. And I was setting up this tour of Europe, my first tour of Europe, 2016. And I got talking to a venue in Torun. They saw that I was connected with, loosely connected with UK subs. And the fellow who ran the venue, Derek, was a big fan of UK subs, lucky for me. And so he asked if I could do this support slot for Jennifer Batten. That's Michael Jackson's guitar player. She was in a Jeff Beck band as well. So I did this talk.
Wow.
With Jennifer, not with Jennifer. She did a talk on guitars. I did a talk on slide guitar and this sort of stuff. Then we did the gig. I did my gig. She did her gig. And then the next day we went to a school together, and she was whinging that she didn't want to do it. And that was quite funny. What is this thing we're doing? Do we have to do it? I'm not playing. All this stuff, This is like the woman in the, all the videos from the bad era, and it was quite amusing, to say the least. So I did my little speech and stuff in front of all these school kids, and so it was like, oh, this is interesting. And there's a whole another story about when I arrived in Torun. I've told the story. I'll briefly tell it. I've made a couple of videos from interviews, and I've put them on YouTube, little snippets and stuff. But when I arrived in Torren, there was a bird on the pavement, little bird. You must think I'm crazy, some of these stories. This is true. And I picked the bird up because I thought it was injured.
Okay.
And I looked at this bird and it just looked at me and then it flew off out my hand, this little blue bird.
Wow.
And I thought, oh, okay. So I carried on walking. I came across the bridge in Torren. So it gives me goosebumps actually just talking about it. And it was all misty. And I thought, oh my God, this place is amazing, you know. And then I met up with this girl after the gig.
Yeah.
Stayed with her for a bit, the one I'd met in Brussels. And so then time passed and I talked about maybe renting her flat in the summer and it didn't work out. And then I ended up doing another tour of Europe. So this is the end of 2016. And I ended up in Poznan again. I'd done my first gig years before. And I basically stayed there for a few days and with this group of people I met. I was in this hostel. It's called Frolic Goats, this hostel. I'll mention it in a minute. And what happened then? So I ended up contacting Derek again. Because I was meant to go to Nice and I couldn't get to Nice it was impossible to get there. I had a gig booked down there. It was too far a distance. So I played in Berlin and all these other places. Where else? I did some gigs in Prague. Netherlands. I started off in the Netherlands on that tour. And so I was in Poland and I was kind of stuck there really. So I thought, you know, I'll sort of long it out a little bit more. So I ended up going to Torren and I'm playing in this in the same venue again in Torren. And I met my girlfriend and I went back to London afterwards. This is speeding things up a bit. And I didn't have anything to go back to. I've been teaching guitar. It wasn't really going too well. I didn't really have a permanent address. I had bloody neurovirus, winter disease, and God, that was terrible. I was stuck in this hotel with neurovirus. And she said to me, why don't you just come over here? So I said, yeah, I'll do it. I got my stuff in storage and off I went. And I was there, lived there for 3 years. And since then, I've got Polish residency, go back about 3 months of the year. And so then I had just carried on with the Polish thing. I had the Polish band Angry Town, which I fronted, which is basically, it was me with the band really. Took all my old songs and we did some new stuff. And one thing led to another really, lots of little radio and TV appearances and lots of gigs, and band split up, and then I reformed it with different people and just bringing it right up to date. Recently, I did some gigs in Wrocław this year, and then again in Torren, and I went back to the same venue again with Derek, and they broadcast that on the radio. That was pretty nice of them to do that. So this venue in Torren, Hard Rock Pub Pamela, has always sort of been there in the background. It's quite an important sort of place for me. And there's a couple of names, like there's a fellow called Wojtek who runs a record shop, which I played at the opening. And unfortunately, he's got Parkinson's disease, and he's not a good way, and it's quite sad, really. But he's really helped me, and there's been a couple of other people have been really sort of important in that Poland story. There's another fella. He's legally old enough to be my granddad. He's one of my best mates. His parents met in a prison camp in the Second World War.
Gosh.
Dad wrote a really good little self-published book about it. And he grew up in Wales. He was born in Wales, and he was actually born in Wrexham, which is where I went to college as well. He was born just down the road from there, and So there's all these really important people, and there's a girl there called Marta who actually ended up living in the UK, very close to a place called Connors Key, which is where I'm originally from. Till the age of 6, I lived there. And she's become quite an important person around the band and around music as well. She recently helped out with the Angry Town thing when we reformed. As a bit of a translator, and she appears in. We did a video for the women's strike movement called "Sister of the Storm," and she's the star of the video. We released that on Polish Independence Day. So it's become quite a sort of like a spiritual home, really.
Nice.
So that's Poland wrapped up. There we go.
Brilliant. Fantastic.